So, hello everyone. Let's get started. It's a little late. So I'm today the moderator. My name is Aziz Shukurov. And the topic for the discussion today is innovations in the machine building. I think it's a very important topic since machine building industry is the key for the success and the key for the economic development and the industrial growth of the country. So let me introduce today's speakers. Mr. Murat Mirzayev, First Deputy Director of Center for the Development of Investment Projects under the Ministry of Foreign Investments. Boeing Anderson, General Director of Uzauto Motors and Uzauto Motors Powertrain. Tom Cargill, Government Relations, General Motors International. Alexey Kuznetsov, CIS Director of John Deere, and Innokenty Bilyakov-Zagumenov is a representative in Uzbekistan of Deutsche Bahn Engineering and Consulting GmbH. So thank you all for participating and making your time for our panel, and let's start the discussion, and let me pass the floor to Murat Mirzayev for the welcome speech.
Thank you and welcome. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of Mr. Teshibayev. It was a replacement at the last minute. He had special tasks given from the government, but I'm his deputy, and I hope I will close all the areas which he wanted to highlight during his speech. I fully agree with what was said, that the industrial sector is a significant and very important part of any economy, being in developed countries or the countries in transition. In Uzbekistan, the government pays a tremendous attention towards the industrial sector, and especially in the industrial sector, we are definitely focusing on machinery industry, mechanical engineering, and so on. Of course, these policies need to be well thought out, because it is very crucial that we approach the issue carefully and through the wise sense. When we speak about mechanical engineering and mechanical industry, basically we have to understand that the world competition is huge. I mean, we have to be cognizant of that. We are not the first country trying to enter this family of industrial country, but the problem is that the big part of our population is involved yet in agricultural sector. Of course, Uzbekistan is well known for its fruits and vegetables throughout the world, but with introduction of new technologies into the agricultural sector, and here we have representative also of a company which is building those machines, the vast amount of employees of the agricultural sector will be freed. And the question comes, can we provide jobs for these people? And one of the good answers is definitely manufacturing. And manufacturing definitely requires a lot of investments, and as well as well thought out policies, as I have mentioned before. But when we speak about mechanical industry and machinery industry and machinery engineering, what is very important is whether we have capacities to develop those industries in the country. We may always say that we have vast natural resources, sufficient energy supplies, and infrastructure which is developed supporting such industry. But the first and foremost, I believe, is a key question whether we have a personnel which is capable to work at these enterprises. And therefore, we think that education, be it for the higher education for engineers or the skills development as a vocational education and training, are very, very important. In many countries which are choosing the path of development of the industry and machinery industry in particular, usually it represents from 20 to 28% of the GDP. Of course, in more developed countries, it goes further. And basically, it provides jobs for almost a quarter of the population, of the labor force. Of course, when you speak about development of the industry, then you speak not only about a particular factory or a number of factories. Then you have to consider the whole value chain being competitive, or even in the last years it was shown perfectly with the pandemic crisis, when many chains have been broken or interrupted, that one should be able to replace such supply chains or even build its own supply chains within the country. Of course, it's a difficult task. I mean, one should not or may not or should not do everything. And here definitely we speak about good relations with the rest of the world, with other companies, and as well we have to consider issues like services which are providing mechanical and machinery industry with supplies, necessary services for engineering again, and supplies related to other things like logistics. What is also important is whether you are able to invest in your own research and development. And we know that in many advanced companies, the tremendous amounts of money are basically served and allocated for R&D. Only this makes them really competitive. Because at the end of the day, when, as I mentioned, competition is very strong in the sector, only innovative products, which are basically well accepted at the market, can be sold. And here, we also have to consider how to support such R&D in Uzbekistan. Of course, as I mentioned, in many countries, this is done by the private companies. But in the case of Uzbekistan and other countries, there are also government's participation when R&D is supported, be it with the financial resources allocation, or maybe creation of favorable conditions when you provide, for example, tax holidays or special conditions for those companies which are spending a lot of money in R&D. Of course, Uzbekistan, for the last years, has made quite tremendous achievements. And we can always name, for example, UzAvto, which is a huge company. I think it was from '95 when the company emerged. And a lot of things have been done from the beginning, also for the skills development, for training of personnel. But this helped also creation of many other enterprises which are basically building the family of UzAvto, and not only, correct me if I'm wrong, there are also private sector companies which are not the part of UzAvto, are today supplying this company with spare parts or special components. Within the last years, we also see emergence of private sector companies, in addition to big names like General Motors, MAN, Isuzu. We know, probably all of us, the company named ADM Gizak, which is a private company which is assembling cars now in Gizak region. And we know that they are planning also to enhance products in their line, but they also would like to go deeper into localization, which is very much supported, of course, by the government as well. Another particular thing is, if we go out from the automobile industry And here we have basically mostly representative of automobile or machinery on wheels, if it's possible to say so. It is important also to mention that machinery industry is also providing other sectors of the economy with main goods. And this is something where we have to pay very huge attention, because for the last 3 or 4 years, Uzbekistan has imported main goods for more than $16 billion. $16 billion. And any one of you who has a car or a machinery at home, you know that within next half a year or 3 years period, you have to replace something, be it a spare part or be it a block of something. And this usually constitutes to 30%. And is Uzbekistan ready to pay every year now 30% of the $16 billion for imports to bring spare parts here in Uzbekistan, to support what has been procured? Probably not. We would like to reduce this substantially, but helping to reduce that, again, we have to think carefully what can be done in Uzbekistan and what can be replaced in Uzbekistan and localized in Uzbekistan. At the end of the day, we are from the center, and we are always speaking about profitability of the project. I mean, nobody speaks here about things given from the heaven. I mean, you have to earn your money to develop further on your enterprise. And of course, we have to consider all the natural resources which are available here in Uzbekistan, whether you can use them in your supply and value chains at full extent. One of the good examples is metals. We don't have them. I mean, we import the bulk of steel, which is required for machinery. We import aluminium, we import other metals. And of course the question comes, do we develop our own steel industry? How we do that? What it takes? And here I have to mention that basically to answer this question, we have again many companies entering today the market of supply chain with spare parts and components. I can name, for example, companies in Navoi Promlitmash, Navoi Mechanical Factory. There are factories in Fergana, there are factories in Tashkent. The very famous example, those of you who have visited Technopart in Tashkent, for example, there is a beautiful factory with a state-of-art, very modern equipment which can produce a lot of different things. And for those things, of course, we have to know whether these products will find their markets. And again, we have to think carefully whether big companies like Uzavto, for example, can access in their family of supply chain other companies which can provide something to substitute those things which are coming from far away. And at what cost? That's the first question. Of course, here we also have to consider about the strong linkage which should be created between the sectors of the economy. Here we speak about machinery industry, financial institutions, because liquidity is very important, especially for production. And this is yet another challenge for Uzbekistan. Of course, we are always welcoming foreign direct investments, but it is also important whether we ourselves are able to support such industries with financial resources. This is becoming quite crucial. And we should not forget also about business incubators, because many ideas, in addition to R&D centers, which are supported usually by big companies, but many new innovations come out from business incubators. And how we develop them, how we support them is also very important and key issue. Because sometimes very interesting innovations which can be adopted by big companies are coming basically from the small one-man show companies with good idea, but sometimes they cannot find the market for this idea. We also have to build this link to put them all together. And I believe the combination of all these ingredients shall allow the development of innovative machinery industry. Therefore, we can propose the product which could be at the edge of competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you for this remarkable speech, and to have the logical continuation of our discussion, I would like to ask my first question to GM Government Relation expert Tom Cargill. So Tom, what do you think how governments can enforce or encourage the development of automotive industry?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. And firstly, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It really has been an invigorating couple of days. I think that the leadership of the Uzbekistan government, from the president down, has really been has come to the fore and been on display. And it is a measure of success as to how many people have actually come to Tashkent for this event. I need to also just quickly say I've been talking to my wife who works in event management and explaining to her the scale and what's actually been achieved here, and she was getting heart palpitations and was incredibly impressed. So to all the people who are actually organising the event, congratulations. But Aziz, I guess to go back to your question, obviously I work for an auto company, and within the auto sector globally, we're going through a level of disruption that really is unprecedented. I mean, really, when you go back to the invention of the car, we really haven't been through anything like this. Whether it's in the area of AV, whether it's in changes to our drivetrains, whether it's in connectivity, whether it's to the way that cars are being used, the level of disruption is immense, and government really does have a significant role to play. I must say that, and all of that is driven by the topic of this talk, which is innovation in mechanical engineering. And so then what is the role that government has? And the previous speaker very eloquently spoke on the role that government has when it comes to investing in R&D, when it comes to ensuring that you have the human capital and skill sets in universities, in your tertiary sector. All of that's very important, but where I wanted to look at was how you draw it through and get these things into the market. So you get the innovations that my colleagues on the stage who have much more understanding of the actual process of engineering can speak more eloquently on it, but how we, the consumers and customers, can enjoy it. So to dig into the innovation first a little bit. I mean, obviously, as everyone is aware, as we all seek to deal with climate change and as nation states seek to meet their Paris commitments, OEMs are working with governments by looking at alternative powertrains. So obviously in light commercial or passenger vehicles, it's very much battery electric. In heavy transport, where it tends to be more hydrogen, and then some other bits and pieces around the side. But all of that is obviously driven by significant innovation in mechanical engineering. And again, as my colleagues can tell you, the amount of moving parts in a battery electric vehicle is significantly less than the amount of parts in an internal combustion engine. So there's a lot of engineering that we no longer worry about, and a lot of new types of engineering that we do have to worry about. We're putting batteries together, we're worrying about transport and storage, we're worrying about sourcing, we're worrying about chemical reactions. Obviously, it's just a completely different world. And that is all driven by the topic of this. Obviously, the headlight or the headline example of innovation in the auto sector right now is autonomous vehicles. My company, General Motors, right now in San Francisco, is trialling taxis where you can get into a taxi and drive from A to B, and there is no driver sitting, it's just the steering wheel moving by itself. And that's in a geo-fenced area where we've mapped everything in the area, and it's got cameras and LiDARs and radars, but this is, but even at while that's, and that's certainly going to change the face of auto over the next 40, 50 years, but what we're beginning to see be introduced into markets is level 2 ADAS or level 3 ADAS, where we're enabled to get to the topic of this question, where it's just a little bit that we're taking elements of that AV and putting it in your driving experience. So you have adaptive cruise control, you have lane change, a whole bunch of different things. And then lastly, connectivity is another great example. Cars can talk to each other now, they can talk to the road, they can tell you what the speed limit is, and in Europe they're now going to start reminding you that you're speeding and try and stop you from speeding. And all of that's through connectivity. And again, all driven by significant engineering innovation. So then what's the role in government for all of that? So if we go back through that list again and you look at battery electric vehicles, all that transition. So what you need to really get up your battery electric or your BEV vehicles is you need infrastructure. You need confidence in that customers know that they are going to be able to charge their vehicle when it's run out of power. And without that, you just simply can't convince people to buy BEVs. I know that we've seen some very, very big numbers of battery electric purchases in Europe, but the industry and what we're saying to government is, what we've really seen here is this is your Tesla purchases, your Mercedes, the high end of it all, and these people also quite often, have their own houses, their own basements, they can put in their charging stations to their house, and so they come home at night and charge it, and that's great. That if you really want to start getting up to the numbers that we want to get to and that the European Union wants us to get to, then it's how someone who lives in an apartment block or doesn't have that regular place to park their vehicle, how they park and how they charge, and that means public charging infrastructure, and that's how governments can help. Obviously, when it comes to manufacturing and purchasing, governments can play a fantastic role there, because we're still, these are still expensive cars to make vis-a-vis ICE, and so to build up the market in a particular area, any form of incentive that can come obviously assists the industry, whether it be manufacturing on the sales side, whether it be even benefits around registration or driving in particular lanes. There's a bunch of things that governments can do to assist in BEV take-up. With AV, the big thing that governments can do there to assist, the AV is a perfect example of what we're really talking about, because the industry is now so much further ahead than where a lot of regulators and policymakers are. So we're in a position in many markets the industry broadly is in a position in many markets where we want to begin testing, and in some, begin to think about how we would commercially deploy this technology, and the safety standards are not yet in place. And so there's a huge role for government in working with the industry on flexible, on regulatory consistency, so that these technologies can at the very least be tested. There's a funny story about New Zealand. So when they were going through this, they looked at their rules and they realised that the way that the rules had originally been written, there was nothing that specifically said that you need to have a driver and a steering wheel. And so then immediately New Zealand went out to the international community and said, if you want to test AVs, come to New Zealand, because we don't need to change our rules, we're ready for you to come. And again, with connectivity, to finish off the 3 points, huge role, where you store this data, how that data is accessed, who can access it, whether it can be stored, whether you have to have a server in a particular country. Again, all of these things are, working constructively with government, we can speed up the benefits that consumers can get to. So on the central thesis of what can governments do to assist in all of this. It is working constructively and positively with industry. It's about supporting in the right ways. It's about regulatory development that works and makes sense, so we're assuring that we're delivering a safe product in a timely way to market. And that we are trying to ensure that as quickly as possible our consumers are able to access the benefits of this innovative mechanical engineering that is coming through our industry. So thank you very much, Aziz, and it would be silly of me not to say that it is absolutely wonderful to be on stage and sitting next to Bo. General Motors is very proud of our history in Uzbekistan. I think we're the 4th largest Chevy market in the world, and I know that the team is doing some amazing things as far as building out the export footprint into Central Asia and other places. And we share a dream with them that this becomes the Detroit of Central Asia, and so it is really wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tom, for this important policy and regulatory issues that you talked about. But before you said thank you, I have another question to you,
Sure.
if you allow me, just to finish the discussion with you. Murotake just mentioned in his speech about newcomers to this market, private newcomers like ADM, Jizah. So what is the view of General Motors being a long time present, like huge company here in Uzbekistan? What is your view on that one?
Sure. Look, as I said at the outset, we very much welcome the reform agenda of the President, and are seeing, in any conversation you have, when you come here, when you open a newspaper, you're seeing the benefits of all of that. And so, in the same regard, we welcome the reforms that we're seeing in the auto sector. I suppose that the one comment I would have is, coming from Australia, I'm an Australian and I come from Australia, we used to have a thriving auto sector, and we don't any longer. And there are other examples where reforms have led to the same result. There are other markets, Thailand, India, which I've also covered and worked in, where there have been reforms very similar to this, which have led to an incredibly, Thailand is a huge auto country, selling trucks to the world. So I suppose our position very much is that these reforms, there is a very big industry that exists here. We need to ensure that we protect and foster and grow that industry. But everything that's been said around increasing localisation, around rewarding localisation, that they're the sorts of things that we're looking for. So I suppose it's absolutely welcome to the reform agenda. It is a great thing that this is the sorts of things that you heard yesterday are not the sort of things you quite often hear when you come to events like this, but it's about ensuring that you do it and temper it with support for what exists there already.
Thank you, Tom. So to continue with automotive industry, Mr. Anderson, so let me ask you to give us quick updates on what Uzauto Motors is doing for the new projects, new programs, new localizations, and also as a new top manager here in Uzbekistan, what do you think on, since the topic of today's discussion is innovations, so what do you think are the perspective of R&D capabilities of Uzauto Motors now and in the future?
Thank you, Aziz. I've been in Uzbekistan now for 7 months. I live and work in Asaka in the Fergana Valley that has a rich history. So I would like to mention 3 topics to this question. First, when you look at Uzbekistan, it has a very rich history. Secondly, it's a geographically very large country. It's 20% larger than Germany. It's 5 times larger than Austria. Third, we have a very young population. So 60% of the population are below 30 years old. And what does this have to do with cars? So today we have 91 cars per 1,000 people. If you compare that with Germany, Germany has 575. So it's important to understand the market we live, operate and work in, and for me it's a huge opportunity to be here and share my experience with a very young team. So most days I see that our team is smiling because we are breaking new records. What could be new records? Producing more than 1,000 vehicles in Asaka, producing more than 500 vehicles in Horazm. So very young team, and that is one thing that has positively surprised me. Secondly, as consumers, we are looking for new products. Together with GM, later this year, we will launch the Chevy Tracker. This is a very modern vehicle, 6 airbags, 5-star crash rating, a lot of technology and Wi-Fi and connectivity, including a device that will help you to find parking if that is needed, I don't know, and perfect fuel economy. So yes, it's combustion engine, but you can drive 1,000 or 100 kilometers on 6 liters. The last P is what about manufacturing? To manufacture a vehicle, you need between 1,500 to 2,500 part numbers. Usafto, we have been here for a long time. We pride localization. Last year, we produced roughly 240,000 vehicles. This year, we are challenging ourselves to produce 340,000. Last year, 56% of our components were localized. It's also important to look at localization by model. So Cobalt is our best seller. We were 69% localized. If you take the tracker, we are today 24% localized in phase 1, and after the new year we'll be at 56%. Why is localization important? You want to have a hometown advantage. You want to give the customer the vehicle quickly. You want to give him or her the features they want. In some cases, we can build a vehicle and 2 days later we have it to the customer. Is that very common? No, but we know that we can do it. A lot of people complain that they're waiting on the vehicle, and yes, they are right. So localization, it gives you flexibility, speeds things up, give you much better working capital because you're not binding money on parts being on a truck or an airplane or on a train. And most important thing, it's develop people. It develops people to work on new technology, new machines, making high-tech products, and developing the communities where we work and live. So my 3 messages, I'm learning every day. Uzbekistan, it's different. Very many young people. It's a large country. Automotive is relatively small, but big. When you look at products, all of us want to have the latest products. And if you live here, I'm sure you will like the Chevy Tracker. I'm sure you will like the Chevy Onyx, because it's very new products. And last, as I say to my team, leadership is not a right, it's a responsibility. And it's a responsibility to develop people. For me, a surprise in Uzbekistan is a lot of people don't like standardized work because they think standardized work is boring. And another surprising thing is that people forget very quickly. So where I spend most of my time is to help people with standardized work and giving them the benefits of standardized work, and also helping them to make a career movement to go from manufacturing to engineering. I think Aziz had a question about engineering, and having been in automotive for 38 years, the most important thing for engineers is to understand how the product is manufactured. So the way we develop our young engineers, today we have roughly 100 young engineers, is to work in manufacturing, to solve quality problems, to go to the field and talk to the customers, to help the suppliers with localization, and then we are ready to develop technology ourselves. If you only remember one thing, Uzbekistan has a lot of opportunities, and it's not going to come easy because it's a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Let's move from automotive discussion into agricultural machine building. So today we have Alexey Kuznetsov, representative from John Deere, which is, I think, the biggest in the world for agricultural machine building. So, Alexey, what could you say to us? What do you think the current status of agricultural machine building here in Uzbekistan at the moment, and whether John Deere, being the biggest company in the world in this sphere, has any plans to enter the market, or how to be present on the market, whether it's going to be sales, manufacturing, localization, and so on.
Well, first of all, I would like to also thank the organizer of this forum. It is amazing what was done so far from the logistics perspective. It's great to see a young generation participating in the forum, and we're very proud to be here. So we are present in Uzbekistan for more than a decade and a half right now. We're focused on, first of all, bringing the latest technology. Modernization is the key. The agriculture today, it is not that, you know, the area that we knew. It's no longer a manual labor. It is highly automated. It is highly connected. It's digitalized. Uzbeki farmers will compete on the world market. We were very glad to hear just this week announcement that ban on hand-picked or Uzbekistan-picked cotton been lifted, which allows the Uzbeki farmers trade on the world market with the cotton products. That's going to be a huge boost to country economy, and we're here to first and foremost to assist. Agriculture is moving to digitalization, is moving to connected fields, connected machines. And we will continue to provide the best available technology here in Uzbekistan. And very important for us would be spend time on adequate training of the operators, of the people who drive the machines, to make sure that the full capacity of machine is utilized. That make sure that we all the tools that is available is utilized. So this is for us probably the first priority is to make sure that the people who run our machines are adequately trained. We do have our local office here that conducts constant training and working together with universities. As far as for entry into the manufacturing, it is a very, it's not an easy decision, or it's not an easy process to make. We are in the process of discussing actually with Uzafta on some common project that could be accomplished. The key for us would be to address the two factors that sometimes are missed during the drive for localization. First of all, sometimes we have to understand that localization may not be less expensive at times as people think. In order to gain the full economic benefits of localization, there should be an established market that is repeatable, that is market-driven. And second of all, people also sometimes forget about the very important portion of manufacturing is the quality. Those two items have to go hand to hand, and it cannot suffer because the customer at the end of the day will be suffering as well and paying higher price either through the actual price of the product or through the performance of the product. Our founder, Mr. Deere, back in 1837, when he created our company, he put one of his slogans is fundamental to existing today. He said, "I will not put my name on a product that doesn't have best that what is in me." And so therefore, before we will make that step to localize product in any market, those are the two items that we have to be very careful. Not suffering in quality, and it has to be mutual beneficial to all parties involved and make economic sense. I hope I was able to answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alexei. And today we have quite diversified panel speakers, and we're slowly moving from automotive into agriculture. And now we also have Inakente, who is representing the Deutsche Bahn Engineering and Consulting GmbH. And actually, infrastructure is quite important part of any economy, and you must have good infrastructure to develop industry. And right now, during previous panel discussion, Deputy Prime Minister Murzakov just mentioned that Uzbekistan started direct shipments through Afghanistan and started trade with Pakistan and with India, which is, I think, very important and a huge success, knowing that in automotive how logistics is complicated, right, Mr. Anderson? So, Inakente, what would you say about being an expert in this sphere? What would you say or advise us? What infrastructure projects should be further developed here in Uzbekistan, or what we need to pay attention for in this sphere?
Спасибо, Азиз.
Thank you very much, Aziz. First of all, I would like, on behalf of our international railway concern Deutsche Bank, to thank the organizers of this forum and for invitation to participate. And the most important thing is that for us it's the big honor to work here in Uzbekistan since 2013. For us, Uzbekistan is a strategic partner. Therefore, once again, I would like to thank the Ministry of Transport of Republic of Uzbekistan and the Railway Management headquarters in Uzbekistan. We are working together on developing the railway infrastructure, not only railway infrastructure. If we look at the window, we can see how what are the changes in this country. We can see those reforms, and we can clearly see them when you are traveling in the express trains of Uzbekistan to Samarkand or Bukhara or Fergana Valley on such outstanding engineer construction, which is Fergana Tunnel, which is 15 kilometers.
Кроме того, Deutsche Bahn работал.
Besides this, Deutsche Bank is working here on the electrification of the railway infrastructures. We were participating in expanding the Tashkent subway network, and we have large-scale, ambitious plans of Uzbekistan president and the government of Uzbekistan. We know about rapidly growing the population of Uzbekistan, and the 7% of GDP growth is an outstanding figure. And the good thing is that even during COVID pandemic situation, Uzbekistan had a positive growth of GDP, which is was rare for that year. And the logistic is very important in infrastructure development, as Mr. Murzakov has mentioned the importance of the corridor connecting Uzbekistan with India, Pakistan, and the Persian Gulf countries. We would like to say that there is other connectivity between Europe and China and Great Silk Road from the ancient time. Existing from the ancient time may help us to repeat that experience. We know that Uzbekistan is located in the heart of the Central Asia and is the hub of connectivity, connecting countries of the Central Asia to the South, East, and North Asia, Pakistan, India, and other countries. We have a good potential for developing of these corridors and trans-Kyrgyz corridors, and if we are able with the joint efforts to implement the railway connectivity project for Kyrgyzstan, China, and Uzbekistan, then we can see the further development opportunities for Uzbekistan regarding the playing the role of the central transport hub connecting those countries. Beside this, we have international initiative decarbonization. On decarbonization, what does it mean? It means that we need to decrease the emission of carbon into the atmosphere, and we need to do this together. The marine transportation tools can help us in this because it will not help us because it emits 6 times more carbon compared to the railway. Therefore, this railway corridor, which is almost electrified, can contribute to the carbon emission and meets the internal interest and the economical growth priorities. As Mr. Anderson has mentioned about the role of logistics in the delivering the spare parts for the machinery construction industry, we as a transport and logistic company shall establish the right opportunities and right ways for delivering those spare parts, and of course establish opportunities for exporting of existing products into the other countries. And what needs to be done? We need to work not only with the focus on investments for the infrastructure, and we need to work with the neighbors, partners for simplification of the custom tax regimes, and we need to strengthen partnership. And our colleague from Transec just mentioned about the digital transit of opportunities of establishing digital documents, and for us it is also very important. And of course we need to pay attention to the green priorities. Decarbonization is one of the way where we can implement those principles in our logistics.
Иннокентий. На самом деле вы очень важную тему.
Thank you very much, Mr. Innocenti. You have mentioned about the railroad through Kyrgyzstan to China. As a representative of UTY, I can say that we are transporting more than 20,000 cargo containers from Uzbekistan. So we have to meet the terms of delivery, the time period, and this railway route will simplify our task.
Would like to add something given this discussion. Please, Murotake, I think you can do this.
When we speak about innovations, especially in the automobile industry, which is highly competitive, especially now with the emergence of electric vehicles, I always recall a very nice story. Once a young man entered the office of Enzo Ferrari and he said, "I would like to build with you sport cars." And Enzo Ferrari answered, "Young man, go and continue building your tractors." The guy was offended, and in few years his sportive car beaten Enzo Ferrari's car in one of the 24 hours racing. His name was Ferruccio Lamborghini. So the enthusiasm is also a very important thing. And we say we have to invest a lot in R&D. Again, I would like to repeat that we have to also build from young population, as it was rightly mentioned by Mr. Anderson, those thinkers, imaginers, dreamers, who can bring actually new innovations to automobile industry and machinery building as a tool. Sorry, this is new technique. And of course, it is also important that the government supports all that. If, again, I'm repeating myself, if not financially, but at least creating a favorable conditions. It is also important that things are made well for the customers. If we come back to agricultural machinery, which cost as Lamborghini, sometimes it is always important to think that any farmer cannot afford such a machine at once. And of course, financing the sales is also becoming a very important issue. And when we say about the infrastructure, for example, for electrical cars, it is always a question what comes first. I think things have to be developed at the same time. Because once one of the entrepreneurs of Uzbekistan, who is very famous, not naming, he told us, I wonder if any gas station will appear in Uzbekistan if there will be no cars. Because you have to bring the product onto the market. And today, the big story is also to educate the consumer. Because with all the story about electrical vehicles and a lot of discussions going, whether it's really good or bad for the environment, for example, many people think it's good, many people object because you have to still yet utilize the batteries, for example, which is a big, big story. And here, of course, you have to choose, let's say, pragmatic way, think carefully, do fast. And I think here in Uzbekistan we have all preconditions and prerequisites for all that. So I would welcome any investor, any company which would like to bring technology, and we would like to say, I would like to say that we will adopt it very well and create all the things necessary. Thank you.
So, closing this session, I would like to thank again speakers for their words and attendance for your time. Thank you. Спасибо. Алло. Алло. Да, Николай, слушаю. Ага. Какая тумба? Трибуна? Алло. Will the session now start with Emadiz aka uzr.
Prezentatsiya qilmoqchi o'zi anaqa yaproqni.
Olib kelsin. Qiling, bersin, tashqari tayyorlab.